First of all, welcome to today. My name is Rory Macleod. I'm one of the members of the Community Learning and Development Standards Council team who are coordinating the event today, and I'll say a wee bit more about that shortly. But I really want to warmly welcome you here. It's fabulous to see such an incredibly wide, deep, broad, high, incredibly sophisticated group of people in the one room. And as you notice that we're closing the doors to make sure that you don't go anywhere. We purposely put lists of who's here today, just names and labels almost, forgive me for that, to let you see who's interested in here today. Because one of the purposes of today is pretty straightforward. It's to try and underpin the idea that in these times we live in, there are a lot of other people out there when we think there are not. And a lot of them are in here today. And about 100 others wanted to be here today who had other things on, who didn't make the cut or whichever way. But there are a lot of people out there in these challenging times. And recently I learned the idea of being alone but not lonely when you're doing your business on a daily basis, which I know you do on a daily basis. So if we have anything in common here today, it's the fact that we're doing what we do on a daily basis with people we want to do it with. And by and large, we'll do that in different ways. So if we don't get anything out today, and we will, we need to go away knowing that there's another half dozen people that I'm going to contact when I leave. And that's why when we say there's no such thing as a free lunch, the bit that you give for that, I hope, will be over the lunch, which we'll have in there, and bring in here. You'll say hello to some people, and you'll say, what did you think of that we've just heard, and how can we do something about it? And realise that this is just a tip of a proverbial iceberg of people that are actually ready to do something. So that's what I hope underpins today, quite straightforwardly. The CRD Standards Council, I'll say just 2 lines about that. We're a group of people who work with field workers who are doing community work, community development, youth work, adult learning, and in a whole ever-widening range of settings. In fact, I've been doing it for 35 years and it bears little resemblance to what it was doing 35 years ago. Sadly, in some cases, I wish it did, because in some ways we've become a bit more anodyne about how we go about our business. However, in some ways we're doing things in territories we never got access to before, and that's really exciting as well. As I say, ever broader, ever deeper, ever wider. Community work is happening in places where so-called institutionalised education isn't getting anywhere near. And lifelong learning, that kind of spray-on term that we have, at times is being overused and overplayed and oversprayed. And I'm not sure that any of us really know what that might be anymore. And whilst we might have our own definitions and our own descriptors of that, I'm not sure we have one that's actually being applied in any meaningful way for those who would benefit from that. And that, I mean, is the people that live in our communities, our citizen colleagues, our practitioner colleagues, our volunteers, our activists, the people that are making things different and challenging as a daily practice the status quo of what exists on a daily basis. Is that the case? I don't know. I'll leave you to mull that over in your world. The other thing that I want to say about the CRD Standards Council is that we're just trying to give community workers a decent crack of the whip. I was tired 20 years ago, every time I went to a meeting and say, you're just a community worker. And I'm saying, what do you do? I'm this, that and the other and so on. And we were just not welcomed round the partnership table. And the myth and legend that's built up about partnerships over the last 10 years has really only reinforced that. We haven't cracked what partnerships do in Scotland, friends. And we really need to go back and visit what working in partnership is. This myth of people sitting as equal members round a table is just that, in my view. It is a myth. We don't do that. We have corporate partnerships whom most of us don't get any access to. They meet when we can't. They also don't tell us the messages, or by the time they do, they've gone through 7 filters to get it. And then they tell you the bad news and ask you to go and sort it out. And we need to fight areas of kind of non-cohesion in that way. We have to fight other little symptoms, the chaotic funding systems that we all survive just under. You couldn't invent the chaos of the funding systems of the last decade. You couldn't sit down and make it up, because it just wouldn't look right. But it's happened. And now we're looking at people who tell me to be sustainable in my thinking, have long-term aspirations and plan for the future, and here's 6 months' money to be getting on with. We need to start thinking differently and challenging those areas, and I hope we'll do a little bit of that today. The Standards Council is doing its little bit, I hope, of bringing people together in our little corner of the world, and by bringing good quality training, good quality opportunities, good quality ideas for our colleagues in the work to discuss. We hope that that will increase the awareness, and we'll be able to raise our eyes and look up for maybe not the first time, but for a long time. And I think that that's important. Okay, what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to hopefully discuss things with each other, and I think we're going to hear some very interesting and I hope provocative messages. Dialogue and discussion are critical in what we do in our everyday work. Perhaps the people, in one respect, that should be listening to that kind of claim aren't here. However, I've also learned recently that sometimes it's good to preach and sing with the choir, because then you can decide collectively to move on and learn a few new songs, maybe learn a few new lines, and I think that's important. So while sometimes we do say, oh, I'm just talking to the same people who converted and so on, sometimes you need to reinforce and grow together so that you can move on to be different. So I think we're doing a bit of that today. If that's a problem, I apologise, I hope it's not. And we're going to do that. And in saying that, later on, we're going to hear from Margaret Wheatley, who I'd like to welcome back to Scotland. Margaret, you're very welcome here in Glasgow, and I hope you enjoy your morning with, I can assure you, some very committed people who are interested in hearing what you've got to say later. And also Carol Craig, who will kick our day off in just a minute or two. I'll say a bit more about Carol shortly. Finally, I hope you get the chance to exchange some details today. I don't know what we're going to do as a follow-up to this. It's sometimes a bit ambitious to have big planned ambitious follow-ups, because sometimes we just don't have the wherewithal to make it happen. But if you've got any creative ideas, anything that you think we can do within reason, let's talk about it, either today or in a day following today, and we'll certainly get some things moving. I am wrestling, as many of the practitioners who support our work in the Standards Council, about how we can look at leadership in communities in a cohesive way that we can share ideas with. So if you've got anything down that thread, we'd be interested in talking to you. There are a number of leadership schools, leadership practitioners in Scotland, and they're in a number of places. But for some reason, we're not coming together. The enablers and the doers aren't really doing it together. So if you've got ideas in that area, I'd be very interested.